And today we're going to talk a bit about anti-Semitism in Europe. Benjamin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'll introduce myself too. Hello, everyone. My name is Benjamin. Just like Florian, I'm currently a Gedenkdiener at the Holocaust Education and Genocide Prevention Foundation. Just so you know, we're currently in Vienna, so we flew back due to the pandemic. But of course, we're still in an ongoing working relationship with the Holocaust Education and Genocide Prevention Foundation.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so to understand a bit of the background why we're doing this, we'll take a look at how Austria works a bit, I guess. Because in Austria, at the age of like 18, after graduating high school, every boy has to do a military service. This is compulsory, so we don't have a choice. We have to serve our country. But in serving our country, we have a bit of freedom as to what projects to go for. The standard one would be the military service, which is 6 months, and it's pretty self-explanatory. You work in the military for half a year. Instead, one could also do a community service, which lasts for about 9 months and is also in Austria. And then there's a third option, which is what Benjamin and I have chosen, and this is to do a service abroad. Usually it's abroad. Right now with COVID, we're still in Austria, but we've also spent half a year in Montreal. And within this service abroad, you have 3 more different options. You can either do a Gedenkdienst, a social service, or a peace service. Gedenkdienst being the Holocaust Commemoration service, which Benjamin and I are doing. Just to show you that this is a very international project. Here are all our partner institutions all around the world. So you can see that young Austrians choosing this option really have a lot of opportunity to go abroad and see a different country and different culture. And to explain why Austria is doing this Holocaust commemoration service and why this even exists in Austria, we'll have to understand Austria's role during the Second World War. Because unlike many other countries, Austria did not become part of the Nazi Reich through military conquest, but rather through popular vote. So in 1938, the people of Austria had a vote on whether to join Nazi Germany or not. And the overwhelming majority voted for yes. It was like 99%, which were the official numbers. So we became part of Nazi Germany. Now, of course, this vote wasn't very fair. On the top right, you can see the ballot, which people voted with, and you can see that the very big circle is to say, yes, I want Austria to join Nazi Germany. The small one on the right is no, I do not want that. And of course, the election was also influenced by the Nazis. But nonetheless, the majority of Austrians still voted in favor for joining Nazi Germany. The numbers probably were not 99%, but still the overwhelming majority. This is because at the time, Austrians were very receptive to Nazi propaganda. And a lot of Austrians at the time wished back the glory of when Austria was big, and they wanted to be part of a big country again and to be powerful again. So after joining Nazi Germany, Second World War started and the Holocaust, and a lot of Austrians became perpetrators during the Holocaust. Examples would be Adolf Eichmann, who was responsible for organizing the identification, assembly, and transportation from Jews all over Europe to death camps like the one of Auschwitz. Or another example would be Amon Gut, who was the Lagerkommandant, or the commander of the concentration camp in Faszczów in Poland. He's also famous or infamous for being depicted in Schindler's List, the famous movie. Maybe some of you have seen it. However, after the Second World War ended, Austria kind of played as a victim. They said, oh, we were just the victims. And so after the war and the Moscow Declaration, which is a document signed by foreign secretaries of the UK, the US, the Soviet Union, and China, those winning powers said, okay, Austria was just the first free country to fall victim to Nazi aggression. So that was the official narrative after the war had ended. And the Austrians at the time were very happy with that narrative. So for many, many years, Austria was seen as the first victim of Nazi aggression. While in fact, as I said, we were not really victims, but rather perpetrators. This all changed when in the 1980s, Kurt Waldheim, who was the former secretary of the United Nations, ran for presidency in Austria. And during his campaign for presidency, it was discovered that he might have been related to war crimes committed by the Wehrmacht. Now, I don't want to go too much into what his actual role was and what he knew or what he did not know, because the important takeaway here is that Austrians started to think about their own past and what they did during the Second World War and the Holocaust, which kind of changed the way that Austrians perceived their past and how they dealt with their past. And finally enabled projects like the Gedenkdienst or many other projects to learn about our actual role during the Holocaust and to try and deal with it. And part of that is Benjamin and I working as Holocaust Commemoration Volunteers and coming to Canada to do our work here, which Benjamin will tell you more about.
All right, so much for why we came to Montreal. Now it comes to the part where I explain to you what we have been doing in Montreal so far, or what we're doing in Austria right now. So, of course, when we entered Canada on the 31st of August, we had to go into quarantine as it is mandatory by law. So after those first 14 days, we immediately got to work. Well, amongst our first work was assisting Jewish senior citizens by, for example, well, carrying rather heavy objects around, but also building stuff together. As you can see in the bottom left picture, we were very, very proud of that. And also we just did some regular website work, website updates, website development, server updates, but also event promotion, especially online promotion for the first few big events of the Holocaust Education and Genocide Prevention Foundation during our stay there, which was in October, a discourse for racism and about racism and justice. And in November, we helped organize the symposium too. So I guess this was probably amongst the first few tasks that we were given. And also, we were approached in the beginning of December by a friend of our boss because she had these Leonard Cohen videotapes. And she asked if we could digitalize them for her because she wanted to make them available for an archive or a museum. So we gladly did that. And of course, it was a huge honor to get this insight And I think probably a lot of people are jealous of us for that. And what are we doing right now? So we are currently working on a big project. It's a short movie that underlines the importance of media literacy, critical thinking in general, the role that the government plays in it, and also why our commemoration service is so important. All right. Okay. All right. So now, before we dig deeper into the problem that is anti-Semitism in Europe, we also want to elaborate what we define as anti-Semitism. And we are focusing on three kinds. First being the economic anti-Semitism. Historically, that was, for example, the barring of Jews from certain industries or certain occupations, just such as practicing law. But nowadays, it's more about the creation of myths, such as attributing Jews with the power over the economy and the belief that all Jews are wealthy, and so on. The second type that we're focusing on is religious anti-Semitism, which stems from the accusation that the Jews killed Christ. And even though in 1965, the Christian Church issued the declaration of the relation between the Christian Church and other non-Christian religions, and this declaration was stated that Jews shouldn't be held accountable for the killing of Christ, but it's still to be seen if their relationship has fully reconciled. And the third type is racial anti-Semitism, which was especially prevalent during times of Nazi Germany, and it attributes certain characteristics, can be physical or emotional characteristics, to Jews. All right, so just so we can show you that it's still an ongoing problem, that it hasn't just disappeared, also not in Europe. This is a modern day example of economic anti-Semitism. This is a parade at a Belgian carnival in Brussels, which is also ironically the seat of the European Union. And there was a float in this parade which was showing Orthodox Jews sitting on top of bags of money and coins. And this just further shows that this type of anti-Semitism is still very, very much present nowadays. And also the organizers suggested that they didn't even realize that it was anti-Semitic, which, so basically after an uproar by the Jewish community, then this was given more of a focus, which of course is problematic. It's also a little bit, well, doubtful if the organizers actually didn't know that it was anti-Semitic, or, well, if it is, then it's still worrying, because it still shows that there would be a subconsciously rooted type of anti-Semitism in their mind, which is also definitely not a good thing.
Okay, thank you very much. Now to understand the situation nowadays in Europe a bit better, and from which communities and groups the anti-Semitism is mainly coming from today, we're going to look at some data which was collected in France. And it shows that not only do far-right supporters here shown as Front National supporters, where Front National is a very far-right party. So not only far-right people, but also Muslims show anti-Semitic tendencies. And it's very interesting here that even though usually the far-right and Muslims don't get along very well, they still have this one thing in common, that they both show anti-Semitic tendencies a lot more than the overall public. Anti-Semitism in the Muslim population is also a problem because it has often been disregarded. Nowadays, the media often focuses on anti-Semitism coming from the far right. Some experts say that this is because the media is afraid of itself being portrayed as right if they criticize immigrants or Muslims. Whatever the reason, as you myself have also noticed, in the media, the focus is very often just on anti-Semitism coming from the far right, whereas anti-Semitism coming from the Muslim population is also a problem. This Muslim anti-Semitism is closely linked to the conflict between Israel and Palestine, which you can see down here on the right in this graph, showing the number of anti-Semitic actions and threats recorded in France for each year. So whenever there was a spike in like conflict between Israel and Palestine, there was also a spike in anti-Semitic actions in France. Take, for example, the second Infidata between 2000 and 2005, excuse me, which had its peak between 2002 and 2004. We can also see that in France, the numbers peaked, going to 936 from only 919 the year before. And also in the Gaza war, or Operation Cast Lead in 2009, the numbers again almost doubled from 2008. However, when talking about anti-Semitism within the Muslim population, which often stems from them identifying with the Palestine cause, we need to make sure to, well, clarify that not all Muslims are anti-Semitic. We've already heard a great talk Wednesday morning by, I don't remember his exact name, Eddie Cohen. He talked about Muslims who saved Jews during the Second World War. One example he also brought was Mohammed Helmi, who during the Holocaust in Nazi Germany saved a 16-year-old girl called Anna Borosch. She's seen here sitting to his right on the bench. So this just goes to show that whereas Muslim is more widespread with anti-Semitism is more widespread within the Muslim population, within the Muslim population, there are very different stances on anti-Semitism. Now, the other group, of course, that shows anti-Semitic tendencies is the far right. We're going to look at an example from Greece, because here, the Golden Dawn Party, which has obvious similarities to Nazi symbolism, was actually the third largest party in Greece in 2015, winning 17 seats in the Greek parliament. You can see on the right their party flag, which shows obvious similarities to the swastika and also the Nazi color scheme. On the left, you can see a group of Golden Dawn supporters waving the flags and the torches, which to me was shocking that nowadays in Europe, such a party can exist and have such widespread support. Now, in 2019, in the election, this party lost all their seats. And nowadays, the party doesn't really exist anymore. So I guess it's a good sign that they didn't make it, but it's shocking that they could even get so far. The leader of the party, Nikolaos Michaliakos, wrote in an article in the Golden Dawn magazine in 1987, "We are the faithful soldiers of the National Socialist idea and nothing else. We exist and continue the battle for the final victory of our race." So this is obviously National Socialist, obviously anti-Semitic, and such a party managed to get 17 seats in the Greek parliament, being the third largest. There's also more examples of anti-Semitism within the party. One party member quoted the protocols of the elders of Zion in a speech to the parliament. Another one is a frontman of a Nazi band with songs such as Auschwitz, where the lyrics go, excuse the vocabulary, fuck Anne Frank. So even though we've had this horrible National Socialist past, people nowadays are still kind of prone to right-wing propaganda, and such parties advocating for anti-immigrant, anti-Semitism ideas still manage to somehow get support. A different example, which is more closely related, or which strikes home for Benjamin and I, because it was in Austria, is the one of Udo Landbauer. He was kind of the main candidate for the 2018 Lower Austria state elections. When it was revealed that he was part of a far-right fraternity group called Germania. And within this fraternity group, they had a songbook. And the songs in this songbook had lyrics such as Gebt Gas, ihr alten Germanen, wir schaffen die 7. Million, which roughly translates to step on the gas, you ancient Germanic peoples, will manage the 7th million. Of course, here the 7th million means the 7th millions of murdered Jews, because 6 million Jews were murdered. The gas, of course, is a reference to the gas chambers. And then he stepped down before the election. He resigned from all his political functions because of what happened and because it is unacceptable. However, only half a year later, Udo Landbauer returned to the far-right party. And the same day he returned, he was elected to head of the party in Lower Austria. So even though he was part of such a neo-Nazi group, the party still accepted him back, not only into their ranks, but they even elected him as a local leader.
All right. So what's the situation right now, especially in numbers in Europe? So we've picked out 12 countries. This is a survey conducted by the European Agency of Fundamental Rights. And it shows how many people, or what's the percentage of Jews questioned that had some experience with anti-Semitic harassment within the last 12 months. So now that you see these numbers, is this really a meaningful statistic? Probably not, as the next graph really shows and puts into perspective, because of all the Jewish people questioned in this survey, in not one of these countries, the majority of the most serious incident that was committed towards them was reported. So now you can see in all of those 12 countries, especially, for example, in Hungary, that did really well in the former statistic. It's just not common that anti-Semitic harassment and especially serious incidents are regularly reported, but it isn't. Oh, can you just look quickly? But as you can see, not to pick out Hungary specifically, it's really, there's a lot of room for improvement for any of the countries, including Austria, in this regard. So yeah, Okay, so as previously mentioned in other presentations during the symposium, the role of hate crime and anti-Semitism on the internet is a growing one. You can see here in 2012, just to explain the statistic a little bit, in 2012, only 12% of anti-Semitic incidents happened on the internet. And 2013 can be ignored because I personally just think that the statistics couldn't be gathered that year in Austria. But if you compare 2012 and 2014, you can see that in 2014, this percentage was almost 35%, which means almost 35% of all incidents happened on the internet in Austria. And you can see this role remains an important one, or a very large one. And what are the key takes for the future, especially to combat this development? Well, the role of social media is naturally a very important one in this case. First steps have been taken. For example, the leader of a very far-right nationalist movement in Austria was blocked from all his social media accounts, which well, again, it's maybe important first steps, but we do not think this measure is very effective standing alone, because the supporters will basically just gather together again on a different platform in the depths of the internet. So there have to be other options or additional options that can help to prevent this development, to prevent this rise. As we mentioned before, while explaining the project and the idea of our project, the short movie, it's important to be a critical thinker. How can you become that? For example, in Austria, what has gotten increasing media coverage was the introduction of ethics classes in school. And I personally think that is very important, because it engages young people into social debates and debates about social problems very early on. And I think this is important because it might help to prevent these people to become prone to internet propaganda later on in their life. And last but definitely not least, learning from the past is essential. That's why we also think that our commemoration service is so tremendously important, because after all, if you don't understand what happened in the past and what acts of discrimination, hate can lead to in the worst possible case, it also becomes more difficult to prevent them, or to prevent atrocities from being committed in the future. And so much for our presentation. Thank you for listening, and feel free to ask questions. I'm sure Florian and I will be glad to answer them.
Definitely.
Thank you for your time. It's very much appreciated. As mentioned, feel free to ask questions. Please type them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So I guess I'll lead off the questions and ask, since you guys are, 2 or 3 generations after the Holocaust, what is the Holocaust sort of, from young people, typically in Austria, how do they feel about this Holocaust history that happened?
Well, of course, I mean, we're being taught about that part of our history early on in school. But I think the most important part of this type of education, I think, was, because it's very common for Austrian school classes to visit the concentration camp in Mauthausen. And of course, I personally believe this makes people feel even like differently about it, because it touches a whole new part of this reality, and you see it, and it really puts things into perspective. And for me personally, it was also a very important step why I thought that this is such a good program that I want to be a part of, because that was really like a key moment where I thought, okay, that's sort of our responsibility, and I want to take advantage of the opportunity given.
I
Great.
100% agree.
Do you guys get to choose where you're going, or do they give you a destination?
I don't know for Benjamin, but for us, they just gave us a destination.
Or
Okay.
you mean for the Gedenkdienst program, or
Yes,
for...
yes, for
Oh.
like to choose Montreal.
Oh no, we can. There are plenty of options. As like there was the slide with the different organizations that we team up with. So basically, you can go to many different countries, but the form of service sometimes is a little different. So Gedenkdienst is really the commemoration service that we're a part of. And then there are also other types like social service, which mainly focuses on development work or work in developing countries, and peace service, which also focuses on crimes committed during war, but isn't necessarily related to the Holocaust.
Thank you. How did your time in Canada, the work you did here, and the connections you made affect your own perceptions of Jews, Jewish community, and anti-Semitism?
You want to go ahead, Florian, or?
Well, of course, the work in Canada didn't turn out as it would usually, because normally part of our work and part of our experience would be to get involved in Jewish communities and meet rabbis, which for us wasn't so much of a possibility, of course, due to COVID. But I guess what definitely changed is the level of awareness of how problematic anti-Semitism actually is. At least for me, when doing these presentations, in the preparation process, I am always shocked to find what in our times can happen in the internet.
We also talked to the father of the current honorary general counsel in Montreal, and he escaped Vienna during the Nazi regime, and I think I mean, of course, we could feel that it wasn't easy to talk about that for him, but that's why we appreciate so much more that he took the time to talk to us. But again, personal experiences when it comes to these type of topics is always something that stays in your memory, I think, for a long time, if not forever. So I think that was a very important experience we made here. And also our boss taught us a lot about Jewish tradition, a lot of things that I didn't know beforehand.
How do you guys know that the anti-Semitic incidents were not reported if they were not reported?
It's always that is always a good question. I feel like there are statistical models to estimate this. But Florian, if you want to.
I mean, we ourselves didn't do the survey. It was done by the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights. And while I must say I don't know how exactly they did the survey, I imagine they just questioned Jews and asked them, did you report the most serious incident of anti-Semitic hate that happened to you?
So they reported it to the agency, but they didn't report it initially to the police, for example.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions, I'll give you a couple of minutes to type them. If not, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you guys for coming and participating, wishing you guys well back in Vienna. I know it's much later there now for you guys, so it's like evening there already. But hope you hope you guys have a good end of your term with Naomi Kramer, and wishing you luck in all your future endeavors. Thank you for participating. Thank you, audience, for participating. That's a conclusion for the symposium. Just so you know, all of our recordings will go up on Vanier website. Feel free to contact me if you're interested. However, give me a week or two to get it organized. So thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon. Have a good weekend. And thank you for participating. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.